Police officers, what's the creepiest disappearance case you've ever been assigned to? Content warning. These stories contain descriptions of tragedies involving the loss of life, the kidnapping of children, and domestic violence and homicide. Story 1. Not a cop, but a mechanic. 10 to 15 years back, I fixed up a truck and put it up for sale. It was September. Not long after, a guy comes by to test drive the vehicle and decides to buy. He comes back the next day with a certificate check, wants to drive it home right away without plates. In my area, you have to change the ownership, get a mechanical fitness, pay the tax, get new plates and insurance on the vehicle before you can drive it home. The buyer told me he had just moved away down the highway. He was living in a trailer on a large remote plot of land he just bought and wanted to turn into a trailer campground some 200 kilometers, 124 miles south of us. I convinced him to transfer the vehicle properly before driving away in the truck. It was none of my business if he did or not, but I knew if he was caught, it wouldn't be worth the legal problems. I told him to take his time, the truck was safe parked here, he had all the keys and the ownership. It's not completely uncommon for people to leave their vehicle with us for an extended period of time. But when he left, that was the last time I ever saw him. After a few months, I was wondering when this guy was going to get his truck, but I didn't have his number or address. I was paid in full, and it was no bother to let the truck sit on the lot. Early that December, I get a call from the cops. Apparently his family hadn't heard from the buyer in months. The cops noticed he had switched the ownership of his new truck around the time his family lost contact with him. So I tell them this story and inform them that the truck is still here waiting for him. The officer told me over the phone that this gave her a missing piece of the puzzle and that she could now enter his home. Pretty sure she was going to do that before she called me. I got word after that, apparently the day the buyer switched the ownership on the truck, got insurance and new plates, he went home and had some sort of medical emergency and died alone in his trailer. Apparently he was found on the floor just inside the door, which was locked from the inside. He didn't make it 5 steps inside and his body was out of view of anyone peering in his window to see if anyone was home. The officer had been to his trailer a few times before and didn't see him. The family called later to arrange to have his truck towed to them in another city. Every time someone leaves their vehicle, we get a number for them and an ETA of when they're picking up. When they ask why, we tell them this story. Well, if that isn't a heck of a thing. The poor guy was dead for months before they finally went into his trailer and found him like that. Even though there was nothing sinister going on, no creepy, unsolved elements, this story is still probably going to be one of the most frightening to me. The idea of just dying like that, alone, and so unexpected, that is the kind of stuff that scares me. Story 2. Not a police officer, but my granddad was. He was a part of the police force in the 60s till the early 80s. Sometime during the 70s, he was assigned to a missing persons case that had been ongoing for a while and had actually been reassigned due to the lack of new evidence. Him and his partner spent months on the case fighting for it to stay open. One day they went and searched the missing person's home again. It caused a lot of uproar with the family as they hadn't really moved his things or been into his home since the case had gone quiet. Anyway, they got permission almost a month after asking and found a handwritten receipt for a car in his bathroom bin. God knows why his bins weren't searched before unless it was just missed. They managed to track down the guy who sold him the car. He said that the missing person had mentioned he was going to store his car in a garage till he had the money to insure it. He even gave them the name of the town he said the garages were in. They went to that town and got search warrants for every single rentable garage, even though they had no evidence he had ever rented one. After a couple of days, they found the car with the guy inside. Apparently, his body was almost mummified because of the lack of sun, air, and moisture. I can't imagine what the smell was like, but they think that he accidentally killed himself while trying to do some work on the car. He would have had the garage door closed because his car wasn't insured. He didn't want anyone to see the car and steal it. It was stored in a rough neighborhood where the garages were cheap to rent. He also paid cash in hand, so he never had any receipts. So yeah, he died of carbon monoxide poisoning. It's painless, and basically you just fall asleep and then you die. He wouldn't have realized until it was too late. The guy was missing for 5 months, and he seemed to just disappear for no known reason. My granddad told me this when I was a kid, and it really scared me that people can so easily just go missing or die and nobody knows where they are. Still kind of freaks me out. Not to make too light of tragedies, but we have a theme going here with buying cars leading to death, so let's be careful while buying cars, folks. But more seriously, good idea to tell someone where you are, and whenever you're working with an engine or fumes, make sure you have really good ventilation, dang it. That kind of crap sneaks up on you. You don't get these huge warning coughs all the time. That stuff slowly saps you of common sense and consciousness. Be careful, folks. Story 3. My grandfather was a policeman and a fireman at different points in his life. His spooky disappearance story actually came from his time as a fireman. He hasn't told me the story in a long while, so I'm a little fuzzy in the details, but here goes. His team gets a call to a house fire in a small village, rural England. It's late at night. The fire was reported by a local who was walking home. Several other bystanders have arrived by the time the fire engine gets there, and there are multiple reports of screams for help from inside the building. They start to douse the fire, and 3 other responders, including my granddad, enter the building via the back door to attempt to rescue the people trapped inside. The thing is, they don't find a soul. Nobody is there. They clear the whole place out, stop the fire, effectively make the building safe. Later on, it's confirmed that the fire started in the kitchen, likely the hob, where food was midway through being prepared. As far as anyone knew, the couple who lived there hadn't been at home. Relatives had no idea where they might have gone that night. My granddad and his colleagues have a funny feeling, so they get local police properly involved. Crime scene investigation uncovered blood on the floor in one room, but any other evidence was destroyed in the fire. They can't confirm who the blood belongs to. It apparently didn't match the blood types of the 2 vanished residents. The fire department are very suspicious at this point, and apparently the police want to drop the investigation in favor of a manhunt for the missing people, but they end up expanding the investigation radius and find that apparently an unidentified van was parked outside the house that left just before the fire was reported. The investigation goes dead, but over a year later they find the burned remains of the man who lived there in a grave in the woods several towns away. They never found the woman, so it was suspected that she killed him and burned down the house to conceal it. They never figured out where the screams from inside the building were coming from, though. Okay, seriously, I really want to go full Columbo on this one and look over the evidence and everything. Seriously, this is a pretty interesting mystery. Obviously, my first thought on where the screams came from is a tape recorder. Tape melts in the fire, no evidence. Seems to me that the wife killed the husband and realized she had no way to dispose of the body and the blood evidence. Burning the house down would be a perfect way to cover her tracks. Rent a van, move him out, burn it down with a tape recorder playing. Oh, and just one more thing. You all been watching Poker Face? That show is like vulgar Columbo, and I love it. Story 4. I'm a corrections officer for a small county in rural Alabama. About 2 years ago, I had just become a supervisor. I was assigned to Delta Shift, which at that point was considered the crap shift. I was brand new and given the task of whipping this bunch of turds into shape. I was barely 1 month in the driver's seat when one of my most trusted inmates just goes ape crap. It was in mid-February when this occurred, relatively cold and very crappy. The inmate involved had been in and out of the facility for most of his life. Papa had nearly more clout in jail than I did. The man was the most trusted inmate we've ever had and was even assigned to work alongside the maintenance officer with limited supervision. Until the night he ate nearly 2 ounces of Crystal Crunchy and proceeded to freak the frick out. Papa asked to be let out to fix a toilet in booking. The control officer let him out and then let him roam up to the booking foyer. Here, we entirely lost track of him. The detention center spent the next 9 hours on lockdown thanks to this. When my officers finally found him, he had gotten into the ceiling access with a stolen key. Papa had watched us from the master monitor in the server room the entire time. Every time someone would look in the server room, he would hide inside the cabinets. If we got too far from finding him, he would scream at the top of his lungs until we turned around. All from the ceiling across the entire jail. Creepiest experience of my life. I've seen some crap. Through the infantry and this job, nothing beats that one, not even doing CPR on a self-termination. Crap was bone-chilling. Story 5. Not a cop, but I watched this case unfold near me. Zara Baker and her dad were originally from Australia, but after she got sick, I believe it was a form of cancer, they moved to get better care. It was just the 2 of them for a while. Then her dad remarried, all the while Zara's kicking cancer's butt. She suffers hearing loss and other issues, but she's going strong. The community adores this girl and tries to help her family as best they can. Then, she goes missing. It's shocking and horrible. This girl can barely do anything herself, and she's gone missing? It takes the media by storm in a relatively small town, so everyone cares. This area is surrounded by woods, so search parties branch out everywhere. Not much is told about Zara's family at first. No one cares about speculation when a girl like her is missing. And then, all at once, these horrible details are released by the police. Zara was locked in a room, the attic I think. I remember commentary about how hot that can get and everyone being disgusted by it. The abuse at the hands of her stepmother. The stepmother is arrested quickly and the investigation wraps up fast. They found Zara about a month or two later and the entire community mourned her for years. She's still brought up in the news occasionally. She was about the same age as me when it happened, and I remember my mom not letting me play in the woods because we didn't know what was happening. This kind of stuff breaks my heart. And honestly, as big as I am when it comes to rehabilitation over punishment in the legal system, when an adult does something like this to a child, I can't help but wish nothing but punishment on a person like that. That is just so disgusting and monstrous. I hope anyone who hurt that poor girl spends every day regretting it. Story 6. Very late to this party, but whatever. Growing up in British Columbia, we hear our fair share of missing persons cases. Hikers never to be seen again, the highway of tears, human trafficking, etc. I find the ones that stick with me the most are ones that were solved relatively quickly and don't have to do with any of those. The one that is the most horrifying to me happened when I was in high school. A girl around 17 years old was reported missing after not showing up to school for a couple days. It wasn't unusual for her to miss school as she suffered from crippling migraines, but it was unusual for them not to be excused. There was a welfare check after no answer from her parents, and when the police showed up, they found what has been one of the nastiest crime scenes in my town since my parents were kids. Apparently, the girl's parents were having relationship problems due to the girl's health issues and inability to live a normal life. Her mom suffered from some mental issues over it. Turns out the father cracked and decided to put the family out of their misery. He shot the girl and her mother dead, posted about it on Facebook, and then shot himself as well. No idea why no one picked up the Facebook post right away. Really sad for my town when that news came out, as the girl was a beloved member of the community and tremendously talented. Story 7. Not a cop, but I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, and Mikhail Biggs was kidnapped in Mesa, Arizona in about '98. I remember vividly the day she disappeared and all the news reports and posters and billboards. It was like the moment your view of the world changed. She was in front of her house on her bike with her little sister waiting for their dad to get home when they heard the ice cream truck. She sent her little sister in for money, and by the time she came back out, Michaela was gone. The bike laying on the ground, back tire still spinning. Little sister runs inside to tell mom about the time the dad drove up. She was away from Michaela for less than a minute. She's never been found, presumed dead now, and they think it was a neighbor, but nothing was ever found out. I know I live and work in the same city Michaela disappeared from, and it's just weird. And what bugged me about it even more in recent years, I work for our district. I've passed her home. I've driven through that neighborhood hundreds of times. I know police officers that worked her case. I know office personnel who were at the school she attended at the same time. 2 years ago, in a school not far from her home, another of our district students disappeared on her way home. She was found a few days later, thankfully. I remember in my hometown when a young girl, I want to say maybe 5 years old, went missing. I was maybe 11 or 12 at the time. Kid was playing outside, parents turned away for not even a minute, and then she was gone. All throughout my teen years growing up, I remember seeing those parents from time to time, and they were never doing great. They never gave up the search in all those years, but nothing ever came of it. And I can't imagine the kind of human being who would do that to a child and her family. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.